We recently celebrated our 5-year anniversary here at the Art of SBA Lending. That's 5 years of providing unfiltered, expert advice to small business lenders, and that's earned us a lot of trust with our listeners, so much so that they call me for career advice. Now, I know there's also a lot of leaders throughout the SBA industry who are constantly looking to source great talent, and that's why we created SBA Jobs Board. SBA Jobs Board connects hiring managers of the SBA industry who are actively searching for their next great hire with my highly engaged audience of SBA lending pros. The SBA Jobs Board is live right now on artofsba.com. If you're a hiring manager, you can go in and post a job for just $99. If you're listening to this and you're ready to start the next chapter in your career, go check out the available positions. Visit artofsba.com for more information. Hello, and welcome back to the Art of SBA Lending. I'm your host, Ray Drew, and today I sit down with Jackie Bogdan, Director of SBA Lending at CrossFirst Bank. Jackie has been the operational brains behind shops like Bank United Small Business Finance, which at its peak was a top 10 shop. And now she's leading a shop, and she's one of the few directors we've had on who's actually closed an SBA loan, like as a closer. And since it's so rare that we get an operations expert on the pod, we spent a lot of our time talking about things like the closer shortage, the closer role, and how it's changed over time. And let's be honest, it's a tough job. I even floated the idea that BDO and closer should switch jobs for a week. So tune in to hear Jackie's reaction to that idea. And be sure to watch to the end because Jackie shares a construction horror story that you will not believe. So without further ado, here's my interview with Jackie Bogdan. Guys, the reviews are in. SBA lenders are calling CORPSMART the best due diligence firm in the industry. CORPSMART is a one-stop shop for all of your due diligence needs, and in SBA lending, there's a lot. Searches, filings, vehicles, you name it. I remember I brought a deal in one time that involved an airplane. My credit guy looked at me and he said, "How are we going to go about perfecting a lien on an airplane?" I said, "I don't know, call CORPSMART." If you're not already outsourcing your due diligence, one, you're probably wasting a lot of precious hours that you could be using to go find more loans, and two, you could make a mistake, especially if you're lending across multiple states because every state is different. If you're looking to streamline and get more efficient this year, this is an easy layup. They can connect right into your LOS so you can order your searches with the click of a button and they'll appear right in their placeholder. To discuss your due diligence needs, visit the CORPSMART website at www.corp-smart.com and you can let them know I sent you.
I have no idea what you're going to ask me, right?
Well, no, I mean, we're going to see where it goes. We're kind of doing a different vibe. I know you said you watched a couple, but we're more chill now, you know? It's like a more chill conversation. Look where we are. Like, look at this.
Right?
And so thank you for coming on, by the way.
Sure.
I've been wanting more like operations. Like you have operations background, strong, very strong operations background. We don't get that many operations people around here. We're very sales heavy, director heavy, which is what you're kind of in the role you're in now. And I want to talk about that later. But first I want to talk about the first time I kind of saw your name. Okay.
Sure.
So you were at Bank United,
Yes.
Small Business Finance for a while. So they were a big player because I'm in Florida and we had like Lynn Singletary and someone else down there in the Miami market. And a lot of people, that was a big shop.
It was.
What was that all about?
It was a Bank United acquired $800 million portfolio. And we created a nationwide platform with a portfolio that existed.
Well, who did they acquire? Like an SBA portfolio?
They did. Yeah. It was Certus.
Oh, that was Certus.
That was Certus's portfolio.
Okay. I think Lynn had mentioned that before.
Yeah.
So
I stepped into a full portfolio to manage as well as create and design a full SBA division.
So how was that structured? Like, were you in charge of the whole division or the operations piece?
All of operations, partnered with Hakeem Kassam.
So that's what I thought. And by the way, Hakeem was on my flight here.
I have dinner with him.
Him and Mitch Vogel.
Oh, both of my
You know
very
these
good
guys?
friends, very good friends. And to be honest with you, I'm nowhere without those people in the industry. Hakeem, Mitch, I could run you a litany of names, that have helped me through the years.
Yeah, and I've heard great things about Hakeem as well. I have not worked with him. I'm sure it's only a matter of time where everyone works with everyone.
It's a very incestuous world, right?
That's what they say.
We've all crossed paths somewhere somehow.
Yeah, but I was kind of fascinated by the shop because it was was it like a top 10 lender? Or
It was.
That's incredible. So, because it just I guess it just disappeared one day, I feel like.
It stepped away from SBA, but it has stepped right back in with some great people.
I did notice that because now it's more, I feel like it's more of a community bank type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time it was production shop. I feel like, cranking out that type of volume, like what, 300 million of 7A?
Easy.
Plus something easy.
Easy.
Well, it's not easy.
Nothing's easy, but it was being cranked out, yeah.
So interesting. And there were some BDOs there. What were BDOs doing on average back then in terms of production? Like the top
15 to 20.
That's so low.
On a regular basis.
That's so low now, I feel like.
It is now.
What changed? I feel like now everyone does huge numbers.
Yeah, I would still tell you that there's good BDOs out there that have a good solid network that really knock out consistently 15 to 20.
That's
respectable. And they can do a lot more, but there's a lot that's given up for that, and that's work-life balance. So,
yes.
I think as you have labeled it, there's an art to SBA, and we still need every one of them out there doing it, and doing the right things for the right reasons. Getting the access to capital to our small businesses.
I feel like 15 to 20 is really good. My BDOs, I give a goal of 15 million too.
Mm-hmm. So do I.
And that's very solid. You can actually, roll up your sleeves, get really into your deals, help your customers. But some people like to go nuts with it. And, I have 3 people coming to the BDO retreat that's going to be in your backyard that do 100 million each. Now they have people around them helping them, but I feel like there's just more 30, 40, $50 million producers today.
Yes, there is. There is. And that is a perfected art. I've worked with many across the country that are solid performers, and a couple of them that are coming to the retreat. They were with us as well at Bank United. So
okay, very cool. All right, so I want to hear about the new gig now.
Okay.
So what is this new gig? You're 2 years into it, right?
Well, we were acquired, so
you're more than that.
Yeah, 5 years. So when I stepped away from Bank United, as you had alluded to, it kind of went quiet with SBA.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stepped aside, and I wanted to see what this was about in community lending. So I also had a partner out in Colorado who had a good program that was small in a community bank. And he wanted to take that and step it up a little bit further outside of the community. So he wanted to create that business line. And so he and I partnered with that. About a year and a half later, we were acquired by CrossFirst Bank, which was not a bad thing because that gave us, 7 states to leverage and springboard this thing off.
So you're regional?
Yes,
Not
we're
national.
regional.
Okay.
We're regional.
Interesting. Yeah. With the acquisitions are crazy. It's like, when you're trying to navigate sort of where you want to work in your career, it's like there's these landmines. It's funny. I just switched 6 months ago.
I saw that.
And I was between a few people. I don't know if I can even say this, but I'm just going to say it because it's my podcast and I can, I guess, say whatever I want. But I was talking to Funding Circle at one point.
Okay.
Obviously, we know what happened there. I was talking to another bank that I'm just not going to name people. I don't want to get myself in trouble. But I was talking to another bank. They just announced an acquisition and going from a $14 billion bank to a $40 billion bank. So that could have totally changed everything. I ended up going to Streamline, which is a credit union where M&A activity is not really as prominent.
Right.
So I feel like that all worked out. But yeah, these acquisitions can go one of 2 ways.
Yes, I'm under another acquisition.
Right. Another one.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yep. We're going to go from, it's a very sizable, they've got a very sizable SBA division. It's a marriage made in heaven, if you will, if you're going to have an acquisition. It just kind of works out for us.
No, is it a bank that was trying to hire you and they couldn't, so they just bought the bank?
No, I'm not that. I'm just Jackie. I'm not anybody of that size. No, it's a equivalent size bank, just about 12 billion in assets. We're at 8, and
Okay.
combined will be a 20.
Okay, interesting. Well, now what I hear is once you go past 10, it gets a little more complicated.
It always does. And my background was beyond a 10. So
Well, yeah, Wells Fargo
exactly.
has a little bit beyond 10.
Exactly.
But it was inevitable for you to get to beyond 10 anyway with what you were
exactly
looking to do.
That's
so.
Yes. It's going to work for us for sure. Small community bank on both sides that regional that will really benefit.
All right, very cool. Well, that's exciting.
So I get to scale it again.
All right, so breaking news.
Hopefully.
So yeah, that'll be awesome. So when you were coming out of Bank United and you were trying to find your next thing, like what was important for you, in that, that bank and the commitments they were going to make for you to kind of build this thing?
To be able to educate people about the program and what the program does. I think that's the biggest concern that we have in this industry is being able to teach from within the bank itself to be able to scale it so they can do this and become a better lender at it for themselves, not just dabble in it and not pay somebody else to do it. So for me, it was about teaching, inside the bank how they could do this and leverage it.
Well, I'm getting goosebumps because that's something I'm very passionate about.
Very passionate.
And
about
it's like no one's doing it.
Mm-mm.
Like I feel like first of all, there's like is there a closer shortage?
There's a talented closer shortage, and it's a matter of having scales. So we need those tiers. We need an entry-level closer, you need a middle closer, you need a senior closer, and they all need to be helping each other because you don't learn this stuff overnight. I mean, I had somebody sit by me and teach me this business, and I was very blessed by the village that taught me. And for me, that's my legacy, is making sure that I'm teaching the next legacy.
Absolutely. I feel that's part of why I do this, is because I was like, people were nice enough to teach me. And it's like, of course I'm going to give anything I know. I just put it out there. But it's so funny you say that. I literally posted something today on LinkedIn, which only got like 4 likes, so I might delete it. But something's not working here. Like everyone, like if you want to bring in talent, you either have to like find those few really good people and pay them like insane amounts, or you're going to be stuck with low and average performers. But then also there's all these mid-year folks who all want to progress in their career.
Right.
And all we have are like underwriters and then like credit managers.
Right.
So if you hire 4 mid-career underwriters and they all want to be credit manager, well, when one of them becomes a credit manager, what happens to the other 3?
It's the same thing from an operations perspective. And I would tell you even more, there's 2 other functions within the bank that really need a skill set that's not often found. And that's your construction or disbursement person, and then your servicing. Your servicing team is the unsung heroes.
No one talks about either
do.
of those things.
You'll see. It's the one thing I talk about is and we may call it the back shop. I call it the shop.
I call it the back office.
Yeah, no, it's the shop, because without them, a lot of times we won't get those Paris reports that we need. We don't get, customers paid on time. We don't do 1502 reporting properly. Without that team, none of this happens.
Why don't they get as much credit?
They're not producers. It's the bottom line.
It's all about production.
It's all about production.
Well, we're going to change that here today on this podcast.
I'm changing it. I'm doing my best to be a legacy aspect to this.
Absolutely.
So
okay. So, you mentioned like good, I forget what you said exactly, but yeah, there's closers and then there's closers.
Right.
Is there like a disconnect between some closers and what the expectations are in today's market with borrowers?
Well, I think it's, and this, forgive me for using an old analogy, but it's not a box checking job.
No, it's a very dynamic job.
You have got to be able to think out of the box and think through something. The SOP is one piece. The internal bank credit policy is another. And then, regulations and requirements is the 4th component of this, the 3rd and 4th component. And you've got to know all of it from a closing perspective. And it's very difficult to bifurcate it out. So some shops bifurcate it out where a closer just collects conditions, right? And somebody else doc preps it or sends it to a doc center. Or some shops send them all over to counsel, which costs, an arm and a leg. And oftentimes they're very helpful. I mean, I call on my counsel friends all the time in necessary needs. But you've got to find a closer. I mean, when we started doing this 20, 30 years ago, the dynamics of how we worked was different. The dynamics of how we work today and what we ask people to do, we're not going to get the same dynamics. So we've got to figure out how to make this work. I know closers that suit up and show up 12, 14 hours a day to get a deal done.
If you've been a fan of the show for a while, then you know one of my favorite companies to work with is Rapid Business Plans. Last year alone, their business plans helped facilitate over $600 million in government guaranteed lending. They're on track to beat that this year. More and more small business lenders and their borrowers are relying on Rapid to help with the business plan, projections, and assumptions because their team goes the extra mile to ensure everything is done fast and done right. And that helps streamline the process. They're great at export business plans, by the way, which are critically important at protecting that 90% guarantee. Rapid also offers feasibility studies, which tells you if the project is, well, feasible. I would recommend these for any large startup loan because it protects you and it protects the borrower and helps you get more good deals done. Go to rapidbusinessplans.com to set up your Get Acquainted call today. Find out why so many top producing BDOs recommend Rapid to their small business borrowers. We're going to leave a link in the show notes just for our Art of SBA listeners. Now let's get back to the show. And I wanted to ask you about that because one of my biggest fears is, overworking a good closer
Burnout?
And then they like burn out and like leave or just go on like hiatus or something.
They have to know that they can throw up a white flag. They're A-type personalities, first of all. So they hold themselves to an extremely high accountability that probably we're not going to hold them as high. They're holding themselves already there.
I'm thinking of my closer in my head. It's 100%.
And so they don't want to falter you as a BDO.
That's exactly right.
Their most important is their client. They want to build that rapport. And behind the scenes, they've got this significant demands called family, right? And so if a closer can work in the convenience of still maintaining their family, maybe they log on late at night and they get things docked or done. They call a customer early in the morning, something of that nature, while they take care and tend to their family. And oftentimes, it's both sides, male and female, that they're trying to balance their household along with a really demanding job that their skill set is set for. We just got to try to figure out what those parameters look like. And if I had a crystal ball, to be honest with you, Ray, we wouldn't be sitting here. We'd have this figured out. But I've been doing this for a long time, and that's the one piece I can't figure out.
Well, we're dealing with people, and it gets complex. But are there any telltale signs on, a closer that might be edging towards burnout? Because a lot of them don't even want to raise the white flag.
I welcome my closers at any time to raise a flag, and I've taught many of them. You have to ask, and you have to be willing, and you have to know it's not a failure. It's like enough's enough. I've got too many deals, or I've got one that's, I may only have one or two, but this one's really complex. Have that daily dialogue. And most of my closers have worked remote for me since I was with Bank United. And so being that manager that picks up the phone and talks to somebody every day, gets on a Zoom call and talks to them, looks them in the eyes on a video chat, I can tell quickly.
Really?
Oh yeah. And when the ultimate answer, I'm fine.
Oh no. You don't want to hear that?
You don't want to hear it.
Well, so how can you tell the difference between a closer who's being overworked or overworking themselves and sort of an underperforming closer who's just overwhelmed at maybe an amount of work they shouldn't be overwhelmed with?
The quality of product that comes out of it. So if you're not doing a quality check on it and don't have a level of that, so that you're looking at what the consistent errors might be or the progress of the transaction, that's the first telltale sign that you either have a closer that may think they know, but they don't really know and they're afraid to ask, versus a closer that absolutely knows they turn in quality work and it's buttoned up, suited up, ready to go, and the customer's been communicated with. And that takes a talent of time to figure the difference between those two, and takes a lot of effort on both sides.
When you say like quality check, is there something you built into the process to do that?
Absolutely.
Is that like a pre-close review or something?
It is. It's a pre-close review. It's pretty robust. And it takes into account those 4 things that I talked about: the SOP, the credit policy, regs and requirements, and the doc. It takes them all into account. Now, 100% of the time, not everything's going to apply to that particular deal. So you have to know when it does and doesn't apply. And that's where the art comes in.
There you go. So you mentioned a little bit ago about how the closer role, when we were talking about like the closer job, processor, counsel, everything, and how you said it changed like from 20 years ago or 10 years ago.
It did.
Like, what was that change?
I think the change started before COVID, when we started to see team members not working the 10 to 12 hour days that we did to invest in this. That taking back some of that, work-life balance. And I still don't know what work-life balance is, but I'll never learn it differently. But the new up-and-coming team members, they're teaching it to us. They're saying, no, I'm not going to do that. And that's okay. But we have to learn how to balance that. So there's so much that has to be learned in such a short period of time.
Well, that's interesting. So yeah, I mean, someone was talking to me the other day and they said people work 40-hour a week so that they can spend time with their family. And I was like, wait, what? To me, it's like it's like I like working, I love this. My family has to pull me back and be like, hey,
mine does too.
Pay attention to me.
Hello, can you put the phone down?
So it's like a different breed. And you think that's a result of a new generation, or just like such a long period of doing that 10 to 12 hour days that they just got fed up with it?
I think it's a combination. I don't think there's a solid answer. I think it's a combination. It's the generation, along with the fact that how long can we do this? We're going to burn people out.
Yeah. And then you got to hire more closers. And then it managing your P&L becomes a little bit of a challenge, especially with price pressure on pricing.
Yep.
Referral fees are kind of creeping up. Premiums are kind of down.
Yep.
And you got
all of that balanced.
And you're in charge now. And do you have to run like your budget and your P&L?
My BDOs, when they see this, here's the line I'm going to tell them: I'm not your sales manager, but I'm doing the best I can right now.
You guys are looking for a sales manager.
Yes, we are.
Okay, well, we're hiring. We'll have it launched, but we are launching a jobs board to bring in all the jobs.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and it's like $99 a month. We post your job on the board.
Sweet.
Super affordable.
Yeah.
And then we blast it out to our whole audience.
Sweet.
So that's a freebie, though.
And you have a good audience. That's a freebie, absolutely.
Very cool. So is that how you're kind of structuring your shop? You got credit rolling up to credit. Sales manager is going to have all the BDOs, and then you're going to be in charge of
handle all the back shop.
Construction, servicing, closing, closers. Operations. Okay. It's a lot.
We're a siloed vertical inside the bank.
Oh, cool.
So we manage all of our own operations, SOX compliance, and things of that nature. So we do all of that.
So what's been the vision for you to come in here and kind of build this thing up?
Just doing what I've been doing for a long time and teaching others and giving them the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? Don't just check that box and don't ask the question. Know why you're doing it. And the purpose behind this, at the end of the day, it's not the bank, it's not the BDO, it's the client. And all of us make money if the client's happy.
Yeah. And you've been doing that training throughout your whole career. And has it been mostly remote that you've been doing it?
Since 2015, I've been doing it remote.
Really?
100%.
Because that seems like a challenge to me, because a lot of people learned in the office with people.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah,
Looking
you had the
over
gopher effect. Everybody look up and, hey, did anybody run into this before? And it was a great learning ground. And we're going to need to do it again if we're going to do the tiers. But I've taught people that had no idea what SBA spelled like from remote.
Well, I fear that in 10 years from now, we might look up and there might not be a single closer left. Because no one's bringing in brand new.
You got to teach it. There's nobody in this world that got into SBA because they saw it on a degree somewhere. No one. They all got into it by happenstance.
Absolutely.
Stumbled into it. Somebody said, hey, I got a job for you, or you do well over here.
Yep.
And so we in the industry need to continue to do that. Grab the person, and that we're working with on a regular basis. We should always be prospecting for the next employee prospect.
But by and large, no one's doing it. People are looking for plug and play talent. So why do you think that is? Why don't more people do what you're saying?
I don't think they realize in a lot of the situations how specialized it really is. I would tell you that's I walked into that in a couple scenarios where they didn't realize how specialized it was. And it is specialized. Whether we've scaled back the SBA SOP or not, it's still very specialized.
Yeah, I know you have to do it, but everyone's so busy. Like, how do you train people when you're like just insanely busy?
You have to take the time to
prioritize it.
Prioritize. I'm always teaching, and my team will tell you, I'm always giving the upstream downstream effect to something. So I'm constantly teaching, and they're teaching me as well.
So are you in recruiting mode like lately? Have you been?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I'm recruiting right now.
So let me ask you on a closer level, like if you're recruiting or talking to a closer candidate who you don't know, what do you look for?
I need to get to know them. I need to know what their background is and their support at home, which are things you can't ask from an HR perspective. So I have cold called closers I didn't know, and started up a conversation and got to know them. And they've worked with me a long time after that. It's just, you've got to know the person and you've got to get to know them. And without a support at home, they probably won't survive in this scenario.
Well, you're probably one of the few people running an SBA shop who's actually closed loans.
Mm-hmm.
And that must be a huge advantage for you when you're recruiting closers.
Oh, I know what I'm talking about.
What about BDOs? When you're talking to BDOs,
a little bit of a
what are those conversations like?
I'm always talking to BDOs, and as far as I'm concerned, with the BDOs, they are my customer, and they have been for many, many, many years. But we have to work together to make sure that we have a good working relationship. There's things that we're going to agree to disagree on, but I'm going to give you the answers as to why, and hopefully we can find a solution that makes it work. And I'd like to say that I've built a rapport with BDOs across the country that is long lasting.
I feel like I'd like working with you. I feel like we'd get along.
We're going to agree to disagree at times, but we'll have a genuine conversation about it and go down and have a drink. There
you go. That's all you can ask. But it's interesting because you say the disagree part. So like, I talked to someone last week and they're telling me about their shop, and it's like, I don't want to say dysfunctional, but like there's sales, and then there's like everybody else, or like closing, credits. Everyone goes into like their corner. Like, how do you, I know you're not going to have a shop like that, right? Nope. How do you make sure that doesn't happen?
I bring them all together all the time. And I make sure that the credit knows what closing's doing. Closing knows what credit is doing, how busy they are, what they're looking at, what's involved in it. They're connected at the hip. Without the four pegs of this stool, it doesn't work. And you can have the bidding war against the he said, she said, is not going to solve your issues. We are all in this for the same purpose, to get a deal done the right way for the right reason. And when it's ready to close, it'll close. But we also need to work to get it closed.
Do you think that it would be a good idea for BDO and closer to switch jobs for a week?
Oh, I welcome it.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
It would. It would. But those are different personalities. They won't work.
They would have a whole new respect for each other's. They would have a
whole new respect for each other's. And I teach the closers that if you really want to figure out what a BDO does, go shadow with them. But they're up in the morning on their phones at kids' functions trying to cultivate network. They're going to socials. You might think they're out on the golf course, but frankly, that's what they're doing. They're working and they're bringing in the deals. And without that, we don't have the deals. So we've got to do our best to piece them together when we get them in and work as a team to get them out.
Yeah, I don't golf, but yeah.
Well, I'm just saying.
There's definitely some of that going on. Oh, I got to go take the brokers to the baseball game.
Yeah, right? My ask would be BDOs respect the back shop and vice versa. There has to be genuine respect for each other and act like they can see you at all times. Never hang up that phone and yell at each other or, have a disagreement, because what you feel is what you project.
I've been pretty lucky and blessed to have pretty functioning, good, healthy relationships with the whole team. Like, there was a point in my career where it was like toxic between closers and sales.
I've seen that. Doesn't last very long.
No, I mean, it doesn't. I mean, something's got to give there. It's just not, but it's just crazy how it's not, I don't know widespread is the right word, but like I tried to do an episode one time where I called 10 ops managers, and I was going to make the episode basically, 10 tips for BDOs, as told by their ops manager, right? Like how to succeed to help the BDOs.
Spilt milk.
They all gave the same answer.
What?
So I couldn't do the episode. Do you know what the answer? Like what advice would you give a BDO?
Communicate.
Communicate. That's good. This is somewhat falling into that. But it's set realistic expectations.
Well, there is a point in time that I've said this for years, that a BDO stops selling and starts closing. And we have to understand what that looks like. We still may be selling, even though we've got a commitment letter. There might be a customer that's on the edge. And so that's where your job is best sold, right? It's keeping that deal with us. And so from an aspect of operations, closing, credit, we have to keep that in mind, as every deal is on the edge. So as much as you've been able to sell it, we also need to help that customer's expectations and, do it in a respectful manner so that they're not feeling like they've got another hurdle to overcome. They kind of do, but how do we sell that better?
Yeah. Well, closing is the hardest part, in my opinion, to where the rubber meets the road. It's where all these things that everyone's been saying are true get firmed up, and we document everything.
We're the ticket to your money.
And it's where it's what they're going to remember.
Yeah.
It
is.
And the closers, do you feel like who's driving the ship in closing, like in your opinion?
Well, I would tell you it depends on the shop. It's together. Both BDO and closer are driving the shop. Assume we've got a credit approval, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've got that commitment. It's a collective togetherness. And we've got that broker out there too that may be involved. So I had a BDO that taught me an analogy on brokers a long time ago. And I still use it today. And that's what helps with that relationship is, keeping them involved and keeping them informed.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest thing.
Right.
My first 15, 20 years working was not in the banking industry. I came from the automotive industry. So, customers would always drive their vehicles in, and kid would get in the car and drive it around the backside of the dealership, and it would go into the abyss, right? That's exactly what happens to the loans if we don't communicate. So if that service writer wasn't telling the customer what was going on and what was going to happen and when to expect it out, they didn't think they did anything with it, right? It never got repaired. You didn't take it in the shop. There was always animosities if something went wrong. So the most important thing you can do is communicate. And the darkness, the quietness, or the lack of information is the number one issue that sets a broker off, sets a customer off, sets a BDO off.
100%. You nailed it with that one. But I've also seen it work so many different ways. Like, who's out there driving that closing checklist? Like, do you think the BDO should be kind of doing that? Or do you think, here's how I kind of work it. I hand the keys to the closer and I say, I'm here, when you need me, basically type of thing. But I'm not kind of putting my head in and like trying to, take over when I'm not really being tapped to.
Right. And I ask my closer to do the same thing. When that baton is handed over to you, you've got to take it and work with it. And back into the date. So, have that pre-conversation with the BDO. So if it's a contractual date, let's back into it. You've got a review period. You've got third parties that need to come in. Everybody needs to know who does what by when to meet that date. And you've got to understand and hold everybody accountable to that. But it starts backwards. What's the closing date need to be? Give yourself a cushion. So if it's the 28th, right? Hypothetically, you need to back that up to the 25th and give yourself 3 days of cushion. So that means you've got to have it into closing review. If you have a pre-closing review, you've got to have it into your manager or whomever does your reviews by the 20th. That means you got to have everything that's not going to affect your documents, your terms, or your conditions.
I feel like that is problematic in the marketplace a lot of the times because in the borrower's head on the 20th, they just gave you everything and they want to close on the 21st.
Oh, sure.
That's the biggest challenge.
It is. And that's where you have to talk through with the customer and communicate.
Well, and if
I get everything on the 20th, here's what I need to do.
Yeah.
And so that they understand there's a process that happens after that.
And if it's ready on the 25th, we'll close on the 25th.
Yep.
It doesn't, but it's like, it's managing expectations.
Right.
but it's still very like just the question, when can we close? Or
Always
what's
comes
the
up.
closing date? That's what adds
And
stress.
don't
to
be afraid of
everything.
it though, but work towards it.
The way you said it makes perfect sense. The way you explain it is kind of like how a broker would want it explained,
Sure.
how a BDO would want it explained.
Yep.
Because the question that a lot of people give that no one likes is, well, I can't give you a closing date. Let's wait till we have everything.
You can't do that. You've got to commit to one. Now, if you've got a great big misnomer out there, let's say it's, I don't know, ground up construction and you don't have plans into the city yet, when's your closing date? You tell me.
Well, yeah. When are you going to get your permit? Exactly. And then add a week to that. Or I just used that one the other day because, with construction, so you that's where you got into SBA, right? Construction.
I did.
Okay.
Well, you've done your homework.
Well, yeah, we have a crack research team here. So that I want to finish up with kind of talking about construction.
Sure.
So I avoid it.
Please don't.
I know construction people don't want me to avoid it. Maybe they can convince me to get back into it, but I took one on here for a good referral source. Of course, it was like a $411,000,
hardest
multiple
ones.
dispersing deal.
Yep.
Obviously, it's just leasehold, but I find it interesting that when you explain certain thits, you have to explain it many times to a borrower. It's their first time doing it.
Sure, they're not perfected in improvements.
No, and it's like it's just repetition, but it's like you get to the part at the end and they're like, "What do you mean I need to wait for my permit or my plans to be approved before I can close? I got my demolition permit or whatever." And I'm like, "Well, we did say this. It's been on the checklist the whole time." I mean, do you have any secret sauce, or is it just a matter of like repeating it or
getting involved early, making sure your construction person or your disbursement person who's going to manage that, if you've got one separate from a closer, and I always highly recommend a shop has somebody separate to handle that. But get them involved early. Let them help the client work through some of the jurisdictions. The best construction person out there will pick up the phone and call the jurisdiction themselves, and they'll work through that aspect.
Wow.
I could rattle a ton of them off for you that will do that right from the get-go, and they get involved. They're the ones that's working directly with the contractor, with the architect. Give us the information. Let us work with it.
When I was at Fundex, we had someone that did that. She was great.
Yeah.
She was great to work with. Do closers also kind of do that? Call into like city? And
I would say that not all closers do.
What about with like licensing, for example?
Licensing that's call into the city. I always, we have this thing called the internet nowadays.
Yeah.
Google. We didn't have that when we started.
Yeah, that's true.
So, it's easy to find the information. Send a link to the client. Help them out. They're trying to run a business. It's our job to be the valued lender.
It's such a good point. I mean, one of my clients texted me last night, and I was in the airport standing next to Hakeem and Mitch, and and he's like, the last thing on this check, he's actually the seller, and the last thing on this checklist is articles. And so I went on Sunbiz, and I saw the articles that it said filed on it.
Mm-hmm.
I downloaded it,
and
we got it done.
Know your state.
Yeah.
Know your state, because not all states that's available, but when it is, get it. Help the customer out.
Florida's easy.
Oh, it's very easy in that aspect. A little pricey when it comes to,
doc
stamps and tangible tax.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. But that's out there with other states as well.
Yeah.
But know your state and know what you can do.
But with everyone being national now, I mean, like a lot of people have to know 50 states.
Hey, when I started in Nesson Legacy Wachovia, we were out of Roseville, California, and I had to know things in Florida. I had no idea what it was.
I start at my last gig. We started a spreadsheet for, I think it was it licensing or was it just Secretary of State websites, but just a database. You know, you start
a collective information, and those are invaluable.
Yeah, I was like, we're going to sell this.
Yeah, they really are invaluable, and a good closer who I always tell them, whatever your toolbox is, whatever you choose to make your toolbox, however you learned in school, whatever it was for your scholastics, whatever that reference tool was, build it. Build it from day one and continue to build it, because we're only as valuable as our toolbox is. And it's just like a mechanic.
Yeah.
They don't show up and ask the dealership for a wrench. They show up with a toolbox. We have to do the same thing.
I want to kind of start wrapping up here with a horror story. So I should have asked you ahead of time, but I really want to get a construction horror story because, we just had Halloween.
Yes.
And, I am afraid of construction. So I was just wondering, has any project ever gone awry that you've been involved in?
Oh, yeah. I've got one off the top of my head, but the client and I ended up being very good friends. We saw 4 Christmases together.
Wait, the movie?
No.
Oh.
Holidays.
You had 4.
We had,
that's a record.
We had 4 holidays together. I actually
Wow.
had to get their draw disbursement. That was 48 months, right? I had to get it extended because it ended up, we were at the end of the project in the middle of COVID.
Hold on. So was that from close to final fund, or did that include the origination process?
That included from close. So when I dispersed it to it, when it finally got to 4 Christmases.
That's crazy.
We got hit by a flood. We got hit by a GC who walked away, had to reinvent a new GC to finish the project in Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn.
And we ended up she and I were great friends. Great friends. But it was taxing on everyone, including her. I remember she called me. I was in Germany. And she called me on my cell phone and she says, Jackie, I'm not a professional in building buildings, but I need to get this done. And we got it done.
What kind of building was it?
It was a 4-story warehouse book retail shop.
Yeah, so with construction, it's just this added risk of just get it built.
Get it built and make sure you have your safeguards. There's somebody in the industry who uses the phrase, but cash is king. It really is. It makes a difference. So make sure you've got a total project. Don't assume that the chairs are paid for from the client. Know that you have enough money for the chairs. You've got to have enough working capital at the end of the day so that if there's, and contingency. So there's really important things to think through. A customer may say, hey, I only want this to be $2 million and I'm going to pay for the rest of it. Absolutely not. I hear that all the time. That rest of it is what's going to kick your butt from here to tomorrow because we didn't have it in the project.
I mean, and this is where it's going to come full circle because I don't think there's any greater need for education than in a construction project with a small business owner.
And I had the world to teach me that I'm grateful that's where I had an opportunity to start. And if, you saw my other comments, it was, my sister said, hey, we got a job for you. And 2 weeks later, somebody said, does your sister really like you? Here I am.
I love what I do. I know you do too.
Oh, passionately.
And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was fun.
I appreciate it greatly.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
All right, that's it for this week's episode. If you want more SBA content, you can sign up for our monthly newsletter and check out our sister shows, SBA Today and The BDO Show. We'll leave a link in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode of The Art of SBA Lending. Ta-ta.